Due to the reduction in shift work and the closure of one of the companies, my brother and I were forced to quit our jobs, leaving us unemployed. For a short period, we survived on unemployment benefits while actively seeking work. However, despite our efforts, we couldn't find anything that could even cover our daily expenses. As the unemployment rate grew, we began dipping into our savings, but our wives wouldn't allow us to use much of it. Faced with mounting pressure, we decided to look for work in agriculture in the surrounding villages. During these visits, we often stopped at local coffee houses. These places were hubs of information where news spread quickly. One day, while visiting a coffee shop we had been to before, we mentioned to the owner that we were looking for work. Just as I finished speaking, a man sitting at the next table leaned over and joined our conversation. "I heard you're looking for work," he said. "I have a job offer for you." He explained that his father had hidden a bag of money on a hill before his death. His father had told him, "When you really need the money, go retrieve it." However, the man admitted that he was too old to make the journey himself. "If you're willing to retrieve the money for me," he continued, "I'll give you 50% of it. But there are two conditions. First, you must not speak about this to anyone. Second, with my share, you must buy gold for me. If you agree to these terms, I'll give you the map." Hearing this unexpected offer filled us with hope and excitement. We quickly agreed to his conditions. The man nodded and said, "Follow me." We walked with him to his house and waited at the door while he went inside. A few minutes later, he returned with a map in hand. "There's one more condition," he added. "You must not go there in day." Then he handed us the map and wished us success. On our way home, my brother turned to me and said, "This feels fishy. Why would he trust us with the map to the money? And why hasn't he told anyone else before us? Or maybe he did, and no one accepted," he added skeptically. "Doesn't this seem a little suspicious?" I shrugged. "We have nothing to lose. Let's at least give it a shot and try our luck," I replied, hoping to ease his doubts. After some deliberation, my brother and I decided to go alone. Splitting the money with the map's owner was already enough. We didn't want to involve an extra partner, as we promised. We also agreed not to tell our wives about the bag of money. Instead, we told them we had found temporary work in another village. Early one morning, before our wives woke up, we grabbed our tools, a billhook and a mattock, and set off. After hours of hiking, we finally arrived at the area marked on the map. It was near the top of a mountain. From where we stood, we estimated we needed to walk another 150 meters. Despite our fatigue, the thought of uncovering the treasure gave us renewed energy. When we reached the exact location indicated on the map, we stopped to orient ourselves. The map showed a scorpion symbol at the spot. We knew we had to look for something resembling that mark. For about half an hour, we searched the area, inspecting every rock and crevice. Finally, on a rock bed, we found it, the scorpion symbol. My excitement was immeasurable at that moment. My brother, who was slightly ahead of me, suddenly shouted, "I found it! Come here!" Next to the scorpion symbol was a large, flat stone, almost like a door. It seemed fragile enough to break with a few blows. Grabbing the mattock, we struck the stone several times until it cracked open. As soon as the stone broke, a horrible stench erupted from the opening, causing us to step back in disgust. "Let's give it a minute to let the smell clear out," my brother said, coughing. "It might be some kind of toxic gas." After a few moments, we turned on the flashlights we had brought with us and cautiously stepped inside. The interior was much larger than it appeared from the outside. We found ourselves in a cavernous space, with a massive stone structure standing in the center. The structure had a strange, almost eerie shape, like the header of an ancient doorway. There was a narrow path hidden beneath the stone header we had passed. It was barely visible until we stepped closer with the light of our lamps. Carefully, we followed the path, each step echoing softly in the confined space. After what felt like an eternity, the path ended, leading us into a much larger chamber. We scanned the space, but it was empty, completely barren, with no sign of the bag or even a hint of where to look next. Frustrated, my brother sighed and said, "If the map was accurate, we followed it to the letter. Either that old man lied to us, or someone else got here first and took everything." He glanced around nervously. We should leave before something bad happens to us. I hesitated, but then said, "Let's check beneath that stone over there before we go. It might be worth one last look." Reluctantly, my brother agreed, and together we began moving the heavy stone. As we heaved and shifted it, my brother suddenly shouted, "Wait! Stop! Look here!" Underneath the stone was a bag, exactly as the old man had said. We pulled it out and our eyes widened in disbelief. It was full of money, but something felt off. The bag was stained with blood. I stared at it, unease creeping into my voice as I said, "This doesn't make sense. If this money has been hidden here for years, why is there blood on the bag?" My brother looked pale but determined. "You're right," he said, his voice low. "Maybe we should put it back and leave this place." We placed the bag back under the stone, covering it as it had been before. Yet, just as we turned to leave, my brother stopped and said, "We need this money. We have nothing. How else will we feed our families?" His words struck a chord with me. Deep down, I had been waiting for him to say something like this. I turned to him and said, "You're right. We could take the bag, use the money to buy an agricultural farm, and in a year or two, we'll pay it back to him. It's a loan, not theft." It was a justification we both clung to. With that, we turned back, retrieved the bag, and left the cavern, carrying with us a mix of relief, guilt, and a faint sense of foreboding. 3 days had passed since my brother and I found the bag of money. Early one morning, as we stepped out of our house, we were startled to find the old man standing near our front door, seemingly waiting for us. "It's been 3 days since you found the bag of money," he said with a calm yet unsettling smile. "But you haven't given me my share yet." Flustered, my brother stammered, We were going to the city today to buy your gold." The old man smiled wider and added, "Oh, and while you're at it, buy 2 bouquets of flowers, one for Hema and the other for Mia." Hearing this, we froze. Hema and Mia were the names of our wives. As the old man walked away, my brother and I exchanged astonished and anxious glances. His words made one thing clear. Not only was he monitoring our every move, but he also knew far more about us than we had ever shared. Despite our unease, we decided to honor our agreement and buy his share of gold. A few days later, we went to a jewelry store in the city. After carefully selecting several pieces of gold, we handed the shopkeeper the banknotes from the bag. The shopkeeper examined the money closely, his expression changing as he quietly called over another man, likely the owner of the store. The owner scrutinized the notes, then looked at us with suspicion and said, "Please wait here for a moment." Our waiting didn't last long. Within minutes, several policemen entered the store. One of them spoke briefly with the owner while another inspected the money. Before we knew it, we were being escorted to the police station. At the station, my brother and I were interrogated separately. We told them everything, from meeting the old man at the coffee shop to finding the bag of money on the hill. We spared no detail. The investigation soon shifted to the old man. The police went to his house, but no one answered the door. After breaking it down, they discovered an empty home that appeared to have been abandoned for years. Questioning the neighbors yielded peculiar stories. Some mentioned that on certain nights the electricity in the house would flicker on and off, even though no one was ever seen coming or going. The police then turned their attention to the owner of the coffee shop. He corroborated our story, recounting how the old man had approached us and offered the job. Months later, my brother and I were finally released, as the police could find no evidence tying us to any crime. However, Simon, the old man, had vanished without a trace. We later learned from the police that this was the second time Simon had evaded them. The first was years ago, when he was caught printing counterfeit money. And now, it seemed he had used us to convert his fake money into gold before disappearing once again.